He was a CEO who measured every second by profit. Time for him was not something that flowed. It was something that could be owned, spent, traded, and bought. Every minute of his life had a number attached to it. Meetings began on the dot, calls ended when the deal was sealed, and lunches were taken with investors, not friends. He had built an empire from the ground up, Coal Enterprises, the symbol of efficiency and precision. He was the kind of man whose assistant would say, "He doesn't waste a second," and mean it as a compliment. But somewhere along the way, between boardrooms and flights, he forgot what those seconds were meant for. The night it happened, the building was nearly empty. The rest of the staff had gone home, but his office still glowed from the top floor. The city stretched beneath him like a living circuit board. Every light another deal, another ambition, another heartbeat he didn't hear. He was alone. But it was the kind of loneliness that didn't feel like sadness, just absence. He didn't even notice it anymore. He only noticed movement, numbers rising, emails sent, the ticking of clocks. He thought he owned time because he moved faster than it. That night, his assistant, a quiet woman who had worked for him for almost 10 years, knocked gently on the door. "Sir," she said, "we were cleaning your storage. We found something I think belongs to you." She placed a small velvet box on his desk. He looked up briefly from his laptop, distracted. "What is it?" "I'm not sure," she said. "It looks old." Then she left. For a few seconds, he didn't even look at it. He finished the email he was typing, checked the stock reports, and only when silence filled the room did he reach out. The box was light, dusty. When he opened it, something inside clicked softly. A familiar sound he hadn't heard in decades. A watch. A simple, old-fashioned, round-faced watch. The glass was scratched, the leather strap cracked, but it was still ticking. He turned it in his hands, and then he saw it. The engraving on the back. "To my son, don't rush time." The words hit him harder than he expected. For a moment he just stared at them, unable to move. The sound of the ticking grew louder, echoing in the quiet room. Memories began to stir, blurred, faint, but still alive. He saw himself as a boy sitting at the kitchen table, watching his father fix that very watch. His father's hands, rough, steady, patient, turning the tiny gears, smiling as he explained how time needed care, not control. "You don't force a clock to move faster," his father used to say. "You just wind it gently and let it live." He remembered the day his father gave it to him, the day he left home for college, the day he promised he'd visit often, call every Sunday, come home for holidays. He did none of that. The first Sunday he was too busy settling in, then too busy working part-time, then too busy building the dream that became his life. He never even told his father when he made his first $1 million. The old man probably saw it on the news. He tried to shake the thought away. He placed the watch down on the desk, but his eyes kept returning to it. He opened his laptop again, but the words on the screen blurred. For the first time in years, he noticed how quiet the office was. The hum of the air conditioner, the faint traffic below, and that ticking, soft, patient, unforgiving. He picked up the watch again and held it against his ear. Still ticking, still alive, unlike the calls he never made, the visits he never took. He closed his eyes and remembered his father's voice. It wasn't loud or commanding. It was simple. "Time doesn't stop for anyone, son. So don't run past it. Walk with it." He had laughed at that once. Now, sitting in the blue light of the office, surrounded by glass and metal and silence, he realized he didn't even know when his father stopped calling. At first, there were messages. "Hey, just checking in, son." Then shorter ones, then none. He told himself it was fine. Old people didn't understand busy lives. They didn't understand ambition. But now, holding that watch, he wondered if his father had ever stopped waiting. His assistant knocked again. "Sir, it's almost midnight. Should I close the reports for tomorrow?" He didn't answer at first. Then he said quietly, "No meetings tomorrow?" She looked surprised. "None at all?" "None," he said. She hesitated, then nodded. When she left, he leaned back in his chair and stared at the watch. Midnight came and went. He didn't check his phone, didn't open another file. He just sat there listening. Tick, tick, tick. He thought about the last time he saw his father. It was at the train station. The old man had come to say goodbye before he left for the city. He remembered his father's coat, too big for his small frame, and the way he'd waved as the train pulled away. He hadn't looked back. He didn't want to. He was too eager to move forward. That image haunted him now. The man who had once waved proudly now existed only in fragments of memory. Maybe he was still in that small house with the white fence. Maybe he wasn't. He didn't even know. And that realization, not knowing, was what broke him. He looked down at his hands. They were still strong, still capable, but they felt older now, heavier. He picked up his phone. The contact Dad was still saved. He hadn't called in years, but it was still there. He hovered his thumb over it, but didn't press. Instead, he stood up, grabbed his coat, and left the office. The elevator ride down felt endless. Each floor number blinking felt like a heartbeat. When the doors opened, the lobby was dark except for the security guard dozing at the front desk. He nodded to him, then stepped into the cold night. The city was quiet, that rare hour when even ambition sleeps. He got into his car, the watch still ticking in his palm. He didn't turn on the radio. He didn't need noise. He drove out of the city, past the bridges, past the neon lights, into the kind of silence he hadn't known in years. By the time he reached the old neighborhood, dawn was touching the sky. The streets were smaller than he remembered. The houses looked the same, tired, gentle, familiar. When he stopped in front of the house with the white fence, his chest tightened. The paint had faded. The flowers were gone, but the curtain in the window still swayed like someone was home. He stepped out slowly. His shoes crunched against the gravel. He stood there for a while, just breathing. Then, with the watch in his hand, he walked to the door. The wood was old, chipped, but the handle was the same. He raised his hand to knock and hesitated. He could almost hear his father's voice again, soft, teasing. "You always rush, son, even when you don't need to." His hand trembled. He took a deep breath and knocked once. The sound echoed faintly in the still morning air. For a moment, nothing happened. Then he heard footsteps, slow, steady. The door opened slightly, and there he was. His father, older, smaller, but unmistakably him. The same calm eyes, the same tired smile. Neither spoke for a long time. The father's gaze fell to the watch in his son's hand. He smiled softly. "It still works," he said. The CEO swallowed hard, his voice almost breaking. "I never took care of it," he said. "It took care of itself," the old man replied. "It just needed time." That line hit him harder than any deal, any loss, any success. He stepped forward, hesitated, then hugged his father. Awkwardly at first, then tightly, like trying to make up for every year he'd lost. The old man patted his back gently. "You're here now," he said. "That's enough." They stood like that until the watch ticked between them, steady and alive. Later, as they sat by the small kitchen window, drinking coffee in silence, the CEO placed the watch on the table between them. It ticked softly, no longer a reminder of what was lost, but of what could still be found. For the first time in years, he felt time passing, not slipping away, not stolen, but shared. He looked at his father, then at the rising sun outside the window. And for once, he didn't rush. He just let the moment stay. That morning, Cole Enterprises would wake up without him. The emails would pile up, the meetings would wait, and the world would keep spinning without his control. But he didn't care. He had spent a lifetime building an empire that couldn't hold the one thing he'd left behind. Now, sitting in that old house with the ticking watch, he finally understood. Time was never meant to be managed. It was meant to be lived. And in that quiet kitchen, with 2 cups of coffee and the smell of morning, he finally started doing just that.